Okay, hello everyone. Hello, yes. Welcome to this hotly anticipated session. A man who needs no introduction, but I will do it anyway. So, yeah, Matt is going to be giving the session today. We will be doing Q&A, or hoping to do Q&A, timing permitted at the end. So, yeah, please do, if you have questions, memorize them, bank them. We'll come to you at the end. Yeah, either I'll come into the audience or put your hand up and ask those questions. So, yeah, round of applause for Matt, please.
All right. Thank you, Adam. All right. Thank you for coming and joining. We do have a bit of time. I have a lot of content to go through, but I think it's going to be a pretty good session here. So this discussion is going to be about some really cool new technologies, managed device attestation, network relay, what we're doing with those things at Jamf. Again, as Adam said, my name is Matt Vlasak. I run I'm VP of Product Strategy. I also run our sales engineering and consulting engineering teams. So I'm kind of have a foot in each camp, which is what I'm up to these days. So, you know, I think a lot about Apple management. I think a lot about networking. I think a lot about security. And I have certain kinds of dreams. And, you know, those dreams, like, you know, probably not shared by a lot of people in this room. But, you know, wouldn't it be great if, you know, you could have a way that, like, only authentic Apple devices could access your IT infrastructure. So that's not just MDM, but your Wi-Fi, your VPN, all those sort of things, where you just make sure that it's always just genuine Apple hardware. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could actually like make sure that of that genuine Apple hardware, that only managed, compliant, and risk-free devices are actually able to make those connections? And wouldn't it also be great if you had all this capability of zero trust networking and zero trust access with just an MDM command, without having to do any like heavy lifting with users or deployments or end user interaction? And finally, wouldn't it be great if you, as the Apple admin, were able to enable your Apple devices to have the seamless connectivity without having to get into like an arm wrestling contest with your networking admins or security admins, or breaking your existing networking tools that you may or may not already own? So for me, with this stuff, dreams do come true. So we have some pretty cool stuff to talk through today to help uncover and make those kind of use cases possible. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to cover kind of we're going to go through the technologies. I'm going to give an overview of what the tech actually is. There's some really important technologies that are being provided on the Apple operating systems, and so some fundamentals and some things to just learn about from that perspective. Then we're going to jump into how Jamf is helping you realize some use cases with some demos of this stuff in action. Right, so let's start with the technology overview. We're going to go through managed device attestation and network relay in turn. So let's start with managed device attestation. So what it is, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it is an Apple platform security feature that provides hardware-based cryptographic evidence, which is an attestation of a device's identity and several core properties. Now, it is basically a way of being able to, I have this actually with a build. So these are some attestations about the device's identity and characteristics that are available through Acme certificates, as well as through MDM or through MDM communications. We'll talk about those in a bit. And it allows these IT systems to like really confidently identify and contextualize those connecting devices. Identify through those identifiers and contextualize through those properties. We'll talk about that in more detail. Now, there are three main use cases for managed device attestation that I've kind of identified here. So one, and you know, the bottom of the pyramid being the most common. One is just making it so that you are eliminating the intentional or accidental leaking of keys. So everything with managed device attestation is using the secure enclave and hardware-bound, hardware-backed keys. So you cannot accidentally export, you can't accidentally view. Those keys are entangled with the secure enclave private key in such a way that you can never export or even view those private keys. And so this, from a certificate standpoint, from a security standpoint, it makes it so you just can't get those keys on another device. Next, it allows you to have, get this really strong device identity and context about a given device. So unlike having to use weaker mechanisms to be able to understand or guess what a device's context or posture may be, you actually get some cryptographic evidence of that, which is great for a zero trust system. When you have to build trust and an understanding of that device, managed device attestation provides some really powerful foundations for that. And then finally, for some of the tinfoil hat wearers out there, it actually really can help against some of those really advanced exploits. Because you're using all these hardware-bound and really advanced cryptographic mechanisms, you can help to avoid advanced spoofing techniques that may be attempted if you have access to a physical device or you're trying to really infiltrate an organization from a nation-state perspective. So how does all this work? Now, as I mentioned, there's kind of two vehicles to get to manage device attestation. There's ACME certificates, and there's some MDM communication. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with what certificates are like pre-ACME, so today. So for some of you, this will be easy. For others, I'm sure this is new, but just a quick high-level primer of how certificates kind of work today on Apple operating systems. So first, you have your device deliver a SCEP mobile configuration profile down to your mobile devices through MDM. Now, that generates within the device's software keychain a private key. That private key is then used to create with a certificate signing request over to the SCEP CA, which returns a client cert. You then have your certificate down in the keychain as well. Now, those two, the private key and X509 certificate, come together for an identity, and then you can use that identity for all these different services on the platform, like VPN, Safari, Relay, and so on. Now, the problem with that is that the private key, you can set to be not exportable. It's not hardware bound. It is in software. It is something that is there. Now, with ACME, the story gets a lot more sophisticated, but you still have the same ultimate final use case and value, which is pretty cool. So instead of a SCEP certificate mobile config profile, you get an ACME mobile configuration profile. It's similar but different from SCEP in quite a few ways. I'm not going to go into that detail today. We'll talk about that in a bit. But what happens is that private key that is used and is going to be used for all the necessary communications later is actually enclaved back. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of the crypto of how is it the actual key or is it like a derivative of the key? That you could explore another time. But the thing to know is that it is a private key that is non-exportable, non-viewable, and is bound to that hardware at the time that that device was manufactured at an Apple factory. Now what happens is that device will go use that private enclave back key to make a request to Apple saying, hey, I think I have device identifier 1234 with serial number 5678, and I think that I have a couple of these properties on or off. And it will sign that request with that private key. Then Apple returns and looks at that private key and validates the signature and says, yeah, actually, you do own that private key. That's cool. I'm going to give you an attestation certificate signed by my Apple server saying, yes, you are device 1234. So then that certificate goes into our keychain process where we now will send over an ACME request to an ACME CA that includes that ACME attestation certificate. Now, this is where the magic really starts to happen. That ACME CA will look at that attestation certificate and will actually issue a WebAuthn client certificate challenge back down to the device. And using similar sort of principles of what it did with the signing to the Apple attestation service, it will actually say, hey, I'm going to challenge you with something that you will only be able to answer if you possess that private key. And again, remember, that private key is not exportable. You can't do anything with it. So if you are able to answer this challenge, then that means that you must have the private key. And I'm not going to issue you a certificate until you can answer that correctly. And this is using, again, a WebAuthn ACME client credential extension protocol that is new, modern, very cool, secure. It's, again, same thing that's using for WebAuthn for that to happen. If you pass that, you get that client certificate. It now lands in the keychain. You merge that identity, and then you are able to use that identity just as you would with a SCEP certificate in the past, but you have all this additional assurance about how that certificate actually was derived. And if you're on a non-genuine Apple hardware, you will not be able to get that certificate. If you've done something weird with your attestations, you would fail that attestation certificate. There's all sorts of fun stuff you could do here with your CA to make this happen. Right. Now, the second way you could get to these attestations is through an MDM property. So that same process, when you enroll the device into device management, that same process will happen with the Apple attestation servers where we'll get this attestation certificate back from Apple onto the device. Now, when Jamf Pro goes and queries the device with a device inventory query, there's new additions here that we will actually get that attestation certificate back to the MDM. Now, what that gives us is all these really great immutable and mutable properties about that device in a way that is, again, like signed by Apple. So we get this in the form of a certificate binary, and we can validate the signature on that it was issued by a proper Apple CA. So we'll talk about how we can use this with Jamf in a minute, but this gives you some really powerful capabilities about like that device identifier that should be immutable and should never change. But then also some mutable properties like, is system integrity protection enabled on this device? Is secure boot enabled? And this is all in a way, again, that is tested and validated by Apple using their hardware and their servers to be able to make sure that those properties are actually what they should be and that hasn't been tampered with someone with access to the device. Right. Now, some critical things to just remember about ACME or managed device attestation to take away from this. So again, the private keys are hardware bound. Now, this does come with some hardware requirements that I call out. You have to be running modern Apple Silicon on both Mac and iPhones, iPads, but it does work on Vision Pro as well, which is pretty cool. The private keys are not at all accessible. You try to go into them like through a keychain. There's no way you can view them, export them. It's totally locked down. This just doesn't work. Those properties that I mentioned are attested by Apple, meaning that you are able to get some information about the state of the underlying device in a way that is, again, cryptographically verified by Apple. Again, something that's never been possible before. We're just, before this, we've been trusting that what the device sends us from an MDM perspective is true. And then finally, it's usable like other certificates. It's very compatible with what you have today and how you're using SCEP in a lot of your organizations. Now, how does Jamf work with this? So we've added support for ACME CAs, ACME CSRs in Jamf Pro 11.7. So that's there now if you've upgraded to that. And so if your PKI provider offers ACME support, it's there for you to play with and for you to start to work with. Now, one of the things that's coming next year is the ability for us to actually use some of those properties in smart groups, excuse me. So if you want to say, I only want devices that have system integrity protection enabled, and it's been attested by Apple that that is the case, that's a criteria you could use for a smart group. So that's going to be coming with the ability also to grab some of this information via API, which can explain, it can make some really powerful security and integration use cases happen. And then the last bit is availability of some of those extended attestation properties. So not just the not just those basic, immutable, those identifiers, but some of those immutable properties or mutable properties. So if you have some ideas of how you want to use this, we'd love to hear this. As you play around with this and you want to understand like how you could use that managed device attestation more, please go ahead and vote on our Jamf Nation ideas. We really want to hear what sort of feedback and what sort of use cases you think we can provide there. Right. Oh, yeah, and this is how it could look in Pro. This is actually in State of the Union. This is a example where we can see those properties coming back. In this case, it's failing to be attested by Apple. We got a failed attestation. That can show not only in the UI, we're going to get to a point where it's going to be in the API as well as with smart group memberships. Right, so there's a lot of resources. Well, a growing amount of resources out there. I'll pause for you to take a photo of this if you want. Jetta, I have to call him out from the Mac Admins community. He's been very, very helpful in a lot of this. He's on the Mac Admins podcast. He's gone and done great write-up on this stuff. So if you want to learn more about the kind of ins and outs of this, there's a lot of great resources available for that. Grab some water real quick. Okay. So next up, network relay. So network relay is basically a new kind of proxy technology that is optimized for performance, and it's using the latest networking, transport, and security protocols, and it's natively built into the operating system. So it's a whole new way of doing networking on Apple devices using a new standard that's emerging called MASC. We're going to talk about that here in a bit. So what does it basically look like? From a really high level, you have your device there on the left, and you have your infrastructure on the right. You obviously want your device to go talk to the stuff on the right. So there's two ways to deploy a network relay configuration today. One is through MDM, where you have a network relay profile. The other is through an application that adopts the network relay or the relay API on the device. So your VPN vendor can add that. You could write something. It can work that way. But either way, you specify this, this relay config. It's well-defined. There's Apple docs. It's all out there. Now what happens is using that information, you will create what's called a mask. Oh, I forgot the name of the acronym at the moment. But the mask is a TLS connection that uses QUIC and HTTP3. So it's a really, really fast, modern kind of connectivity tunnel. And it basically encapsulates your organizational data to a relay server and to your infrastructure and apps. Now, if this sounds like iCloud Private Relay, it should, because it's the exact same technology. This is Apple's enterprise extension of iCloud Private Relay to allow you to use that tech for connecting to enterprise resources as well. So some of the benefits and the key features of this thing. It's an opportunity to be truly agentless. It's OS native, and it's an OS native client. As I mentioned, you could push an MDM profile, and you actually can get this configuration onto the device without an app. It's super fast and compatible. So using the QUIC protocol, it's the same thing that you use in browsers now. In modern browsers, you get some great multiplexing for connections. It's very efficient, and it's compatible with networks because it runs over port 443. It's so it's a generally open port, which is usually a problem for a lot of VPNs. And it's FIPS compliance cryptography. So for those that have compliance requirements, the fact that it's using TLS and v1.2, 1.3, and mutual TLS with X509 certs, it's very standards-based. A lot of security organizations understand what this is and what it's not, and it fits really well in those organizations. And last but not least, but really importantly, it coexists with other VPNs. So if you have another VPN on the device doing user-based things, you can also use this for either other user-based access requirements or to enable some connectivity sort of use cases, which we'll talk about here in a second. Now, so as far as support, we've added network relay mobile configuration support in 11.9. So if you have a network relay provider that you would like to configure through Jamf Pro, it exists there today. There's a great WWDC video that you could check out if you want to learn more details about what relay is right there. Now, we mentioned it today, but I am really, really excited that we're going to be introducing our Jamf Network Relay Service. So the Jamf Network Relay Service is a purpose-built cloud infrastructure that we designed to eliminate those connectivity and onboarding challenges that you have with Apple devices that normally make your job difficult as a Mac admin just trying to get a Mac to talk to stuff, right? Usually you either have to be on-prem on your network, or you have to wait for the user to set up a VPN, or you have to spin up some other special VPN, or do proxies, reverse proxies, all this sort of madness just to get that device to talk to your backend infrastructure. What we're offering here today is a way to make that all just go away, just using MDM at the core. So here's how it works. So what we end up with, again, device on the left, data on the right. You have your Jamf Pro server. What we do is we deploy down to the device a Acme configuration profile as well as a relay configuration profile. Now, those cause the device to use a new Jamf Acme certificate authority that we have in the cloud that will allow you to be able to get an attested Apple certificate, or a certificate attested by Apple, down to that device. Now, we attach that Acme certificate to that network relay configuration in such a way that we are now creating that tunnel to our Jamf Security Cloud in such a way that only those trusted, genuine devices will be able to create that tunnel and connect that service. Now, what we do in real time is we will actually read in that certificate in our Cloud Edge. We'll validate that all the PKI checks out, that the signatures are right. But we'll also do a live check with Jamf Pro to make sure that device is still managed, it belongs to your organization, and all the necessary kind of pieces fall into place. Now, normal certificate-based authentication just relies on you having a valid cert, but this is truly zero trust in nature in the sense that there was no certificate that was issued with an identifier that was kind of proposed by anybody in the whole system. It was all self-identified and derived and then attested by Apple. And what we're just doing here is we're making sure that that device actually exists within your organization's Jamf Pro, and it is compliant, and it is valid for that connection. Now, we do a little bit more. We actually will run those requests that we do receive through that tunnel through our risk and compliance-based policy engine. So we will actually look at what the user is trying to connect to or what the device is trying to connect to. And based upon those least privilege access policies, based upon the device's risk score, based upon its compliance state, some of the stuff you saw this morning, will all be considered to decide whether or not you should be able to ultimately get access to those resources. Now, this is a really cool architecture. I have some good demos to kind of show how this all comes together, but it's just the key thing to remember here is it's all just done through Pro. It's very, very clean when it comes to deployment. Some of the configuration for access policies in Security Cloud, but the deployment is all completely driven in a zero-touch way through Jamf Pro. Now, some of the key benefits here: no app, no logins. It works in pre-stage, which is incredible, and it's super secure and compliant and fast. So no app means no app to deploy, no VPN network extension. This is native Apple operating system client that we are activating, and it is just working the moment we put that configuration on the device. No logins, no user-based logins for this. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to separate out that device identity and device connectivity from the user identity and connectivity. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish the fact that this device is a known entity, independent of who the user is. It is owned by your organization. It is genuine Apple hardware. It is actually live and managed by your Jamf organization, and that will just allow the device to connect to your infrastructure. Now, the next bit is then use some of the modern IDP technologies that are out there, like single sign-on extension. You have Okta FastPass. You have Microsoft Authenticator, those sort of things, to then leverage that trusted connection to then allow your authentication to go through from a user perspective. The idea being that if you don't have a trusted device, you could actually cut off that network traffic to prevent that user, even with valid credentials, from being able to get into your organization's IT assets. And then the cool thing with Prestage, I'll show it in a demo. This all works as your device is booting during Setup Assistant. It's really cool in the sense that you start your onboarding, you start to see the enrollment of loading stuff in Prestage. The first one can be your Acme certificate and then the network relay. Your very next one could be a SCEP request that will actually use that network relay that was just set up, and it could go behind your firewall and securely make that connection to be able to do that. It's awesome. I mean, it's the number of hoops that I'm sure I've talked to a lot of customers that they have to go through to get that working is incredible, and it's just built right in. And of course, very secure using TLS standards and so on. Now, I'm really excited to say that this is available today in public beta. So if you are already a Jamf Connect customer, you can head on to Jamf account to go and enroll and beta this out, try this out today. If you're not, go ahead and talk to your sales rep, and we'll be able to get you set up with a trial so you can give it a go. But we really see that this is bringing networking right to your kind of home base in Jamf Pro and in your management domain to make those connectivity challenges go away. So let's see some of this in action. So one of the first use cases I kind of mentioned, enhanced device compliance. So this is kind of going back to that managed device attestation bit. So what we want to do here is we want to ensure that only genuine Apple Silicon devices with system integrity protection and secure boot enabled are able to access your internal infrastructure. Seems like a totally reasonable request. So how can we do that? So what we will do today is you can use a smart group to actually grab a lot of those mutable properties. Now today in Jamf Pro, those are not the attested properties. That's going to be coming soon. But what you can do with that last one is with the network relay profile, you can, by setting this up as a smart group criteria, what this does specifically is it makes sure that that network relay configuration and Acme certificate was able to land on the device. Now, if you're on a virtual machine or on some hardware that doesn't support Apple devices or doesn't support Acme, that last bit will fail, and you will not match the smart group. Therefore, you will not get certificates and any other things that are attached to it. So you're doing this kind of attestation by smart group matching based upon the installability of that final profile. So in this case, what you can maybe see on some devices is that system integrity protection is either not reported, it's not available, something's preventing that from being reported. Again, in this way, in a non-attested way, in the future, and in an attested way. And what that could do is that could have you match a certain smart group, and then we could use something like Jamf Routines, which is something we have in our portfolio that could send a message to Slack to say, hey, a device that is not actually compliant with this non-genuine Apple hardware or secure boot's disabled for some reason, there's something going on, let's send that to Slack so we can check that out. You could also use any number of other integrations that you may or may not already have set up to notify you of that fact. Okay, the next one, instant resource access. So this is kind of bringing in that network relay element into the fold. So the use case here, I want to ensure that only devices that are attested by Apple, enrolled in Jamf, and free of threat are able to effortlessly access essential company applications. So this is getting a little bit more into some of those access use cases. So let me show what this could look like. So here we have a Mac device. The new UI is that you have VPN and relays. As soon as that mobile config lands on the device, this will show up in system preferences. Now here you'll see the list of domains that are actually matched here that are used to match and send traffic through the tunnel. In this case, we have a private internal resource. So if we do this where it's even private DNS, it just loads. It's immediate. It just connects right away. Now, what's really cool about this is because the way Apple has implemented this works really low level. So things like terminal commands like git will actually allow you to be able to use this network relay as well. So again, without any user authentication or user VPN, you're able to clone a repo. Now, what we're doing here is we're actually raising the risk level of the device. So we're putting the device out of compliance of some security policy. Now, when that happens, I'm going to go ahead and try to refresh this page, and it's going to get blocked. The network relay has prevented the connectivity to your internal resource. If I then go back over here and I try to clone that repo again, it's actually going to get blocked there as well because we've disconnected that network path for that private route to be trusted through GitHub. So that is all that coming together. Now, what's cool about this is because it's an Apple platform technology, this works on iPhone as well. So here, if we go open up iPhone, and this is a device that has not yet been enrolled, you can see we have the iPhone on the left and our security cloud configuration on the right. You go through, you try to access some internal applications, it's not going to work. Now, what's cool about this is we allow two ways to kind of connect to your resources. One is through our security cloud, where we then give you your set of dedicated IP addresses for your organization that you could use in things like your Microsoft conditional access policy. So what you'll see here is that I'm trying to log in with valid credentials, but because my conditional access policy does not have traffic coming from one of those trusted source IPs, it doesn't let me in. Now, because it treats that device as just any other untrusted device. Now, say I want to go fix this, I want to deploy it. Now, there's no movie magic here. This is really how easy it is. You create an active a network relay configuration activation profile in Security Cloud. We've added this new capability where we will actually pull all your smart groups within this deployment tab from Jamf Pro, and all you do is hit deploy to Pro. That will actually send all the necessary configuration over to Jamf Pro, and you'll see that the relay configuration lands on the device, and your networking is now up and running. It got the Acme certificate, got it tested by Apple. All the routes are all set up. Everything is ready to go. So now if you open up your browser and go to that website that didn't work before, you'll see that that will load right away. And again, this is all using HTTP quick. It's a super fast, super compatible protocol. In this case, we're egressing out of a set of shared IP addresses out of Singapore. And there's a whole discussion we could have about ZTNA, but that's another JNUC session. Same with that other app. And then for Microsoft, what you'll see here is that you're able to connect to, you're able to log in this time successfully because what we're doing now is we're egressing that login traffic out of a trusted IP address, which has been associated with a trusted name location within the product, within Microsoft. So what's great about this is you're now layering security. You have a lot of your identity capabilities that are being built up. There's a lot of great sessions this week about platform SSO and single sign-on extension. You know, they're adding layers to this. Now what we're doing is we're adding networking as a factor effectively. You could really easily just layer on this kind of multi-vendor, multi-layer approach to identity and security and get that this way. Now, we didn't stop there. This will work on things like Apple TV. So again, it's all built in there. So just like you saw, you now have a network relay config there. So if you have certain kiosk environments or other sort of applications that require network connectivity on any untrusted public network, you actually can have a secure route there. So here we're just going to see, again, in this case, we're supporting IP addresses. We can go over and we can open up our VLC for this example and connect, and you can see that that loads right away, and I'm able to start to stream video content right onto that Apple TV. And last but not least, of course, Vision Pro. So works great on Vision Pro 2, common user interface, common UI. My favorite background that they have there on the Vision Pro now for that environment. But yeah, all the network, I mean, it literally is all the same. This is the beauty about working directly with the operating system. Apple has built this out in a generic way. It's great. Now, the last use case, onboarding connectivity. I alluded to this during the pre-stage, and this is a pretty cool one for those that deal with these sort of challenges. So I want seamless Kerberos and skep.ca connectivity during Setup Assistant and beyond that makes sure that my single sign-on experience using my certificates, using Kerberos, using whatever I may have in my environment just works. I just want that to work. So here we have a new Mac device where it's just out of the box. So what we're going to do is we're going to start it up and pick our language, do the normal setup here. And you will see that remote management is going to kick in right away. Now you'll see here, I blow it up. It happens fast. But you will see that it's going to say installing network relay. So that's installing the Acme cert and the network relay. And then it is going to go a few more steps, and then it's going to install the skep certificate as well. So skep certificate using a private CA that is behind a firewall. Now, besides cloud IP addresses I spoke about, you have a private IPsec connections that you can make right between our cloud and your infrastructure. So you have private access into those resources. So now when you open up Keychain, you're able to go in here. You could actually see that that skep certificate was issued correctly. So we'll take a look at that. So we go to My Certificates, and you'll see that a skep cert was issued to that device, and that routed completely over that private network relay route. And then because, again, this is such a low-level technology that Apple has built into the operating system, that things like getting Kerberos tickets, they just work. You can go over there, sign in. You're going to sign in with your Kerberos domain credentials, and then you get that ticket. And so that's a Kerberos server that's behind a firewall, way deep in your networking stack. We just created that connectivity to just work right away. So to recap, Apple has delivered some really profound, I think, game-changing kind of technologies that just completely change the security foundations and paradigms of the Apple platform. I think both provide their individual elements to help to build a truly zero-trust architecture and platform. As Jamf, we now support Acme and network relay profiles, so good to know. That is in the product today. We also, if you use Jamf Pro and Manage Device Attestation, you can really enhance device compliance that is able to secure those devices and also feed partner integrations. So, for instance, we showed the smart group thing. You could have that control if you get certificates. You could have a control if you get other profiles, like a single sign-on or platform SSO profile. You can withhold sending a platform SSO configuration to a device if it doesn't meet the necessary attestation requirements. And then with our Jamf Network Relay service, you can enable this really seamless connectivity to enable workflows that otherwise have been a bunch of hoops to hop through, both for you, for your networking team, for your users. It just erases a ton of complexity because we're just using all that native capability that's built into the stack. So, using all these Apple foundations and Jamf's platform, we really think that we're able to make these Apple devices the most secure, connected, productive devices that are out there. As kind of to steal from the theme of this morning, we're letting you go further with your Apple devices by making connectivity hopefully just go away, make a lot of those challenges start to disappear, and it allows you to get grow your Apple fleet and make Apple more successful within your organization. There's a session tomorrow. I'm presenting with some folks over at Apple that kind of goes into some of these details, but also a bit more broadly about how we are taking what Apple builds in the hardware up to their operating system and how we make that easy. Little session on that tomorrow. And there's also a lab, I think, happening about network relay where you could actually get your hands on some of this stuff either today or tomorrow. So with that, a couple questions if there's any, but thank you for your time. All right. Okay, Adam, where are you? We got a question over here.
I don't need a mic.
Oh, you do not need a mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Are there any special network configurations needed for the network relay, Jamf network relay, that are different from the iCloud private relay?
I'm not familiar with the Icon private relay.
Repeat.
Are there any specific network configurations for Jamf Network Relay versus Icon Network Relay? So Network Relay is a service that any vendor can, that is a networking vendor that can do this. Is Icon a vendor that's doing this as well?
I was talking about the iCloud private relay.
iCloud Private Relay. Right. Maybe I do need that mic. No. So iCloud Private Relay is an iCloud Plus personal subscription thing. So you would go into settings, iCloud Plus, Private Relay, turn that on and off. Now what's really cool about this is it fully interoperates with that. One of the neat little technical implementation details that they did is they will actually wrap both personal traffic and the work traffic through the first initial tunnel between the device and Apple's edges, and then they will actually turn that around and split the two, where they will send ours within another tunnel. It's double tunneled, where a second tunnel will go to us, and another tunnel will go to iCloud's second hop for privacy. So they're doing some really interesting stuff, so that if you're snooping and looking at that device on the network, you have no visibility of whether it's work data or personal data. It all just looks like private relay traffic to an attacker. So there's just the mobile config on there. Otherwise, iCloud Private Relay works perfectly alongside with it.
What's the minimum macOS version that can make use of, or that can utilize the device attestation and the network relay?
So the minimum OS, I believe it was last year's version, so macOS 14. You have to make sure you are aware of the hardware requirements, like Intel-based Macs will not work with this. Network relay is pretty compatible with it. The main one is the Acme certificate. You need to make sure that you have the right hardware to be able to get a attested hardware-bound network cert, or Acme cert. Otherwise, the network relay connection can't be formed.
From a troubleshooting perspective, when you change the attestation state, the network just looked like it was failed. Is there any objects or logging on the system that identifies that it was an attestation change rather than just a general failed network situation?
So are you asking if the attestation fails, how does the network become aware of that? Is that right?
More for if a technician's on the machine and they see that network's not working, how do they know it's something with the attestation and rather than just a network issue? Is there a unified log entry that we can track down?
Good question. Yeah, so the login, that's the drawback of not having an app, right? There's the login goes into the console application where you can start to see some of that stuff happen on the device. But you will also see, you can troubleshoot through the Jamf Pro side eventually here. We're gonna see that those attestations failed, and you can start to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on there. If you were able to get a successful attestation at the beginning, but it's failing for some reason later, you could then dig in to see what's going on there. While you do that, the other thing to mention here, I mentioned it's interoperable with VPNs. The reason is because what's really cool about this is the per app relays actually will work ahead of your existing VPN configuration, whether it's per app or per device. It takes precedence over that. So if you have some infrastructure that you want to make sure is always reachable through this tunnel, you specify that in this configuration, and then it will fall back to your VPN and then fall back to your default network route. So it all just kind of works in a really consistent sort of way. Adam, go ahead.
Hi. Just a quick question. Where does this fall under Sequoia new network structure that was released recently?
When is it? I couldn't quite hear it.
So the network attestation, how compatible is it with Sequoia and Apple new network infrastructure, because they made some changes. So I'm just wondering if it's going to be compatible with Sequoia, or do we have to be always specific with these settings?
No, as far as from all of our testing, iOS 18, Sequoia, everything's working great with it. So, this is one of the big benefits, I think, of this, is that, again, we don't have to write software that has to go through compatibility checks, every time Apple releases. We're working with the Apple team, and, the Cisco's using Network Relay as well for their implementation. There's other vendors that are, relying on this technology now, and they're doing testing to make sure that this stuff works release over release. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a few. Thanks
go for it.
Presentation, really interesting, by the way.
Thank you.
I thought I was a fast talker, but you have completed the job, I guess, by improving me. But the question is, you saw that network relay was interfering or actually not allowing the internal resources, for example, and that could be because you're not compliant. So how are we going to inform users what action needs to be taken in order to be compliant again?
Yep.
So in the beginning we had Jamf Trust, which is living in the menu bar and is giving feedback to the end user.
Exactly right.
But that's being eliminated. That's one question, by the way. You have another one?
Okay.
And
Can I answer that one first?
Yeah, sure, go.
Just so I can get that out of the way. So yeah, so Jamf Trust today is the application that we're using for our WireGuard-based networking communications, and it also serves as a great place to show what's going on. Now, our vision where we're moving pretty quickly is to put it in Self-Service Plus, as you saw today. So all of those user kind of if your risk level goes too high, you fall out of compliance and stuff all of a sudden stops working, we want to be able to show that in Self-Service Plus. That's going to be your single window for all the things happening on Jamf, on your device.
Okay, good to hear. Another one is, how does this work with, for example, bring your own devices? Let's assume that you now install the Jamf Trust app on the personal device that's not enrolled in MDM. Can that also leverage the network?
Yes.
layer?
Great question. So specifically support with user enrollment for BYO or in any BYO?
No, let's assume it's not in MDM and will not be enrolled because it's a personal device. It will not be enrolled through MDM in any way.
So this technology, the way we've built it, it requires the device to be managed. And that was a very intentional design because we want to build trust up all the way from the beginning of device management. So today, the device has to be fully managed. Now, tomorrow, if you're doing, what we're working towards, and it's on the roadmap, is to support user enrollment. So if you do account-driven user enrollment on that BYO device, you're getting a managed partition, and within that you could have a managed network relay on that as well. So that is coming soon. We don't have support for that today, but our BYO strategy that we would advise doing is to go down the route of user enrollment.
Okay, last question, but how does that then work if you have now compliance rules in Jamf Pro, but you also have compliance rules in Jamf Security Cloud for the Jamf Trusted app, for example, that might conflict each other? How do you separate them from each other?
Yeah, they're actually all communicating together. So so what happens in Jamf Security Cloud is you specify a risk level, and then in Jamf Protect you specify the policies that will raise it to to a specific risk level. So your plans define if a device should be high, medium, low. That signals over to Jamf Security Cloud and it says, hey, Protect's saying that this is a high risk device. I'm now going to, anytime a user tries to access something that is not allowed to be accessed as a high-risk device, it starts to block it. And so it's all working together.
How quickly will that happen?
Sorry?
How quickly will that happen?
That's there today. That already exists. So you use some.
How long does it take before?
Seconds. It's very quick. It's all webhooks, and I would say within 30 seconds the network tunnel will be affected.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I saw that there was a requirement for the public beta that you needed to have a Jamf Connect license. Is that also a requirement when this goes public?
Sorry, there's a lot of noise over there. Say that one more time.
So you mentioned there with the public beta,
Yep.
you had to have a Jamf Connect license.
You're right.
Is that also a requirement when things are available for general release?
Yes, this is tied to Jamf Connect as licensing-wise. Yep. Any other questions? Yep, I see one back there. Getting your steps in, Adam. Thank you.
Hey, how's it going? So one of the important things to my InfoSec department has been SSL inspection. Is there any future plans to add the ability to do SSL inspection with the Jamf Connect network relay?
So tell me what you mean by SSO inspection, like actually looking at the SSO WebAuthn traffic? And,
Yep.
And so we don't have plans to build that inspection, but you have now the networking capabilities to do that. So you can use Network Relay to siphon that traffic, that WebAuthn traffic, to a proxy of your choice, where you crack that open and do what you want. But you could do that without having to deploy some other VPN or some other sort of agent on the endpoint to do that sort of traffic redirection.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. We got one up here, Adam. Yeah, bending over so I can hear the speaker here.
So in the tunnel, you've been talking about listing the domain names that would be passed through the tunnel. I'm saddled with some horrible legacy software that only operates by IP.
Yep.
Is that still?
IPs will work. Yeah, so the Apple TV demo was actually going off IP address. So yeah, thank you to Apple for that one. Yeah, so it's any TCP, any UDP traffic today we'll go through that. It doesn't support other protocols, at least today, as far as I know. Yeah. Any other? Oh, one over there. Yeah, we have some extra time for questions too because there's no session after this. So go ahead.
So if there is a Zscaler SCEP cert, how can it work in tandem with this Acme network attestation?
So you have a Zscaler SCEP certificate, you said?
Yes.
Are you using ZIA for?
I'm using ZPA and ZIA.
So yeah, so if there's a certificate that you need to fetch, you could use this network relay configuration to go grab that certificate and provision it on the device, so then Zscaler can just start using it right away. So it's actually a good problem to this chicken or the egg issue with Zscaler and some other things, like how do you get a cert when you don't have a VPN already set up? You use this device-attested connection to be able to go get that certificate in a trusted, reliable way, making sure that you're only getting connectivity from a trusted device owned by your organization, land that SCEP certificate, and then Zscaler can start reading it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more?
Okay.
Maybe one at the back for fun. Yeah. I didn't need to do that run this morning.
We'll do one more, and then we can just answer questions over here. So it's almost drink o'clock.
In your diagram, you had Jamf Cloud or Jamf Security Cloud.
Yes.
Is that a requirement, or can you just use Microsoft's compliance editor or compliances to do the same thing?
So if you want to use our IP addressing stuff, you do have to route us through the cloud. Like that's how you're able to get our source IPs. You route the traffic from the device and whatever network they're on to our security cloud, and then egress out of our trusted IPs. Now, some of the stuff that Microsoft's doing with that we have integrations with Pro, there are API-based configurations you could do already. That's our Microsoft device compliance. That can work in tandem with this. So this gives you a little bit more network granularity and flexibility than what you can just get through that API side, but they can work in tandem. This is just an additional capability of what you can do with a networking side of things.
So for my organization, we don't have the security cloud. Would we be able to still set this up without it?
You would need, so Jamf Security Cloud comes with the Jamf Connect license. So you would get that as part of this configuration if you, that's why we have it bound to that. That comes as part of it.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, at that we'll call it. I'll be up here for a few minutes to answer any questions. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for coming to JNUC.